Welcome to the latest episode of Enterprising Minds. The whole crew's here. Alex, Ruthi, and Dave. We are going to touch on a topic that everybody's talking about already, so we'll lend our voices to that, which is AI's GPTs announcement from their dev day, and then talk about 2024 predictions, just for fun. And I think it could be fun if we come back next year to see how good or bad our predictions were. Why not be a glutton for punishment? So first things first, new feature tryout. I just want to make sure Zoom a while ago has said that they're going to do an AI smart summary tool. We have yet to try it out in our processes. So if you guys are okay, we can try that out and I can turn that on. Cool. Okay. So for anybody.
What does it do?
Well, let me read the window that just popped up. Meeting summary with AI Companion is now on. The meeting summary uses AI technology, which includes third-party models. Zoom does not use any audio, video chat, screen sharing, attachments, or any communications-like content, such as poll results, whiteboard, and reactions to train Zoom's or third parties' AI models. We'll send the meeting summary to invitees after the meeting ends, based on the settings configured for this meeting. Anyone who receives the meeting summary may save and share it with apps and others. The account owner has access to the meeting summary. AI-generated content may be inaccurate, misleading, and always check for accuracy. I'm pressing the got it button to signal that I understand.
Or you can hit leave meeting and run away from the AI revolution.
Exactly. So essentially what it does, my understanding of it, is that it listens to our conversation. It creates a transcript of said conversation, and then at the end of the meeting, we'll email either the meeting host or the attendees, again, depending on the settings, a summary of the meeting. So it will be basically who is in attendance, who said what, main topics, and then kind of elaborates on that. So I've heard of other podcasts testing it out to see if it's a good way to get a summary of episode recordings and then do like a summary blog post from that content where, you might add a bit of color or formatting changes, but for the most part, a summary blog of the episode and why you should listen to it is pretty much written for you based on the conversations you have naturally. So it'll just be a fun thing to test out and see. I know, but before we hit the record button, we were commenting on how just impossibly hard it feels to stay on top of everything that's happening with AI and all the different announcements. So, Ruthi, why don't you kick us off with topics that we were talking about before? Yeah.
That's right. First, hold on to your Zoom summary. We're going to come back to that with 2024 predictions because I've got some thoughts.
Okay.
And teaser on Copilot as well. Okay, hot take. eBooks are out. GPTs are the new thing. By which I mean, check out my chatbot. And this could be true of podcasts. Maybe podcasts are out too. But I think people like listening in the background. I think that's sort of a different ballgame. But seeing as ebooks are more of a reading-based interface, I think that whereas in the past people have done ebooks and you download the ebook, instead it's going to be some variation on interface with my GPT as the way that we interact with either content creators, brands, etc. It's going to be a slightly different model, right? You don't need to download necessarily a chatbot. Maybe you just get access to it. That's sort of my hot take. I don't know how much time people are going to want to spend on ebooks, let alone, published paper books. when GPT is a much more interactive way of learning, of digesting information. And bonus with voice, you can listen to it and talk to it as well as read and type.
So I definitely have some thoughts if that's your premise.
Fire away.
Okay. I'm going to yes and you instead of yeah but as part of my continual evolution as a human being. I think it will be that way for a certain portion of people who enjoy interacting digitally. I think it makes sense for people who are creating a lot of content, who have an audience, who are already interested in interacting with them. I don't think it would be good for audience building. And I also think that I forget which episode we talked about it, but I remember equating AI earlier in 2023 to the industrialization of food, and how it will be good enough for a lot of people, but for the people who really care and the people who want to have a good experience or want to be healthier, they will go with the organic, they will go with the slow, hard things to do, the more traditional ways of doing things, because either A, it'll be a more enjoyable experience. They learn better that way, right? Different methods of learning are better for different types of people. But then also just the experience of having a physical book and the intention behind that, I think allows for people to learn more deeply. Like I even did this recently with, I finally bit the bullet and became a subscriber of Harvard Business Review. And I did it because I kept bumping up on the article limits digitally. But then I realized I am more likely to read this if I have a physical thing. So I also subscribe to the physical magazine. And I have to tell you, getting a glossy magazine in the mail, other than the really crappy community coupon books, is actually a really nice experience that I think a lot of people are forgetting about. It's nice to receive mail that actually means something to you, and not the like, please send money things that you always get. And being able to sit down and focus on an article, put it down, walk away, and just have it be the thing that I did for a little bit is just a much better experience than what I can do online digitally. I can take an article and have it summarized via AI, and I can get all of the perfect little points, right? But I don't have a depth of understanding. I haven't mulled around the ideas very much. I have only just gotten that surface level interpretation of whatever the content was. So I think eBooks will be an important signal for other things, right? You might be able to get more audience. It's a statement of, at this particular moment in time, these are my ideas on this particular subject, right? You're more likely to evolve, one would hope, the longer you stay in a field. But then it also unlocks other things. Like if you release a book as a consultant, you're able to get better speaking gigs. You'll be able to get, be seen as more of an authority because you actually took the time to sit down and say, this is something I stand for. This is what I think on these particular topics. Here are the examples I'm pulling in. And it allows you these secondary benefits where if you have a GPT, I'm not creating a relationship with you. Yes, I'm getting the information, but how do you differentiate one person's GPT over another when it's in a sea of online app stores, basically? And Yeah. Anyway, I can keep ranting, but I don't see it replacing other things. I think it only helps the people who already have an audience interact with that audience who want more information from the person that they like. Yeah. Alex, your turn. Or Ruthi rebuttal. That's
you got a comment there. Go for it.
Oh, I've got a whole bunch. It's more of a springboard. It's not even a rebuttal. It's like I lob that out as sort of a provocative statement, just to think about, because we've been talking about it ourselves. Like, what's the role of eBooks going forward? What is the role of these new chat GPTs type? I use that as shorthand, right? I have some sort of chatbot that you can talk to, and you can sort of interact with an author rather than reading their book, as an example of one way you might interact with the technology. But I think, Dave, you bring up some really good points. And what it makes me think of is this new way of interacting is entering an ecosystem of blogs, of short videos, of just basic search, of web pages. And when each of those new things, when blogs came out, people didn't stop reading books. They kept reading books. And I think what happens is it crowds out where the new technology does better, right? Blogs is much more at like quick short form stuff than books ever would be. So you maybe have fewer pamphlets, say, because now you can just go read a long form article blog. So it crowds out in the spaces where it does better, but then it allows the remaining mediums to do more of what they do in that sort of niche space. So I think it's going to be an and, to your point. I think all of these different ways of interacting with AI chats are going to be additive, and they're going to find their niche, and you'll interact with them in addition to all the other mediums, and where and how you interact with the different mediums might depend on the subject matter.
I think as a brand or a content creator, there's been a reliance on AI just to take your same content and create it in that many different formats. I was just thinking about the pain that any social media influencer has right now. You have to have a short form for YouTube Shorts, a long form to basically get better ad revenue. You want to do a TikTok, then you're doing Stitch with those, so then you're constantly finding other people to then tag team, basically create partnerships or work off of their content and their kind of virality, and then you're creating the next piece of content, the next, and the next, and the next, and it's like, even as think of like a self-published author to continue that, that role. That's a lot of content when they're supposed to be writing the sequel to the book. That's a lot to create.
Well, and I saw a thing on LinkedIn, and I apologies, I forget who it was. It wasn't an immediate connection of mine, but somebody who was commented on it. They were somebody who wrote a book on a marketing topic, and they uploaded that book into the GPT. Then they uploaded all of their blogs and social posts that they did previously, and they created it. But while they were doing it, they realized anybody else could take any of my content and upload it and create one of these GPTs under my name. There are no guardrails around, do you own this content that you are training this bot on? Right. So there's going to, like, all of these things where it's like, if you were to take somebody else's work and then create something off of that. Now, granted, there's fair use. There are all these exceptions for education, but fundamentally it's like stealing ideas and other content. If if I was to take like a Scott Galloway book and then incorporate that into my GPT, that is technically infringement, right? Because I'm claiming that as my own by promoting out this GPT that uses this other content.
That's difficult because you're talking about source material as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be Dave's Ultimate Marketing GPT, which has tons of different authors' works uploaded, and as long as you're citing your sources saying, well, Scott Galloway says, mm-hmm. You could probably find lines or ways around any of those problems or rules. And then will Scott Galloway get a percentage of some sort of profits if you were to have some sort of paywall of, I don't know, membership, you name it? No.
Not with the current legal setup.
Yeah, not with that setup. I mean, they would just be noted and remarked upon. But then again,
or you get a massive list of cease and desist letters from any of the writers guilds, and if you're discovered, right? But that's only going to happen to the most successful GPTs when they find out that, oh, hey, my source material is in this, that, and the other. Like, the authors that are suing OpenAI right now under the class action. So
what's the line there between basically a marketing textbook? This is just the interactive version of a marketing textbook, and they're citing a pretty long set of sources if you ask for it. If you were to rename all of their content and say this is Dave's words and only Dave's words.
I'm not sure there is the citing piece within the GPTs. If there is, that's a great step, and I like that. If it isn't, it's just more of the bad content of people stealing blog posts from people because it's out in public and they think they can, yeah, I mean, there's a certain culture within the internet space where like stealing is okay and they're happy about it, and they'll even like contact the content creator to say, hey, look what I did with all of your content. And it's like, seriously? Talk to my lawyer. Like, Paul Reutzer of the Marketing AI Institute talked about on their most recent podcast about how, people have actually done this with him and his content. They've taken the blog posts and the podcasts and everything else, and they, repackaged it under something else, and then sent him a link to the stuff as if he would be happy that they stole his ideas.
I'm seeing that more and more on TikTok, Instagram, with reels and shorts of straight up somebody else from that same platform's content. Like not reposting it, not linking to it, not kind of give any credit whatsoever, but instead saying it's their own. I mean, they'll crop out basically the person's face or something, and the camera angle looks a little odd the entire time. Stuff like that. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
I don't know how far that goes. Let's move to Ruthi, unless you have a point right on that.
I do. I want to run in a slightly different direction, not on this, which is a bit on the depressing side. And I so appreciate you guys think about these things, because I'm just like, oh, just do it. It'll be great. It'll be wonderful. You guys are like, wait, but people in the internet aren't always great. Here's the question, because to me, a lot of these, like an enterprising GPT chatbot, I don't even have the right language yet, guys. I'm working on it. Is not an if, but a when. And so my question to you guys is like, under what conditions would we set that up? Like, where would it make sense for us to set one up for this activity that we're doing right here?
So, in one of the podcasts I was listening to this morning when I was getting ready for the day, the person interviewing or being interviewed about the GPT announcement said, you know what, the GPT piece is really, it's reframing what people typically call agents, right? So if you create something that it is supposed to do a specific task for you, like chatbots in their traditional sense, this is something that we've been doing with company content for a lot of years for the customer service chatbots. Here's our web structure, crawl our web structure to find all the content to assist with the, customer questions. Here are all the FAQs we've ever created, digest that and have that ready to go so that you can help out the customers. Here's phone logs and transcripts from, all of that. We've been doing this for years for that very tiny specific thing. But now we're blowing it out to also creating the demand generation content, creating, content that's supposed to represent you as a personal brand or your company as a institution, that's where it gets really dicey, and that's where you start getting that liability piece, because it's no longer just your content. It is now everybody's content. And as much as people want to believe in, Wikipedia is this like one source of truth. No, it's not, because people are constantly editing it. They're constantly hijacking profiles. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of work to try to keep it this nice kind of pure thing. But it's an arms race, and it's not a single source of truth. It is it's a source of truth, but not the, right? Yeah, I don't know. Clearly, I'm still processing it and trying to figure it out. I think all of us are, but I'm trying to cut through the hype around it. And so much of the tech bro stuff, whereas this is going to be like the best thing ever, and it's going to be amazing. And like, really? Because Google Glass sucked. Like, and everybody was stoked about that too. Yeah.
I could
somebody else
just throw one different example in there. I was just thinking of all the Wikias and kind of the side ones that are made for different fandoms.
Yeah.
So if you want to know what Chewbacca's race and what planet he's from, you could create a Star Wars wiki or Star Wars GPT, and you could ask it request, see whatever
Isn't it Wikipedia?
Yeah, there's a Wikipedia for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I know that.
But there's a very ad-covered experience for just about any TV show fandom out there that exists, and those experiences aren't very good. I mean, we've talked before about like recipe blogs. Recipe blogs are awful, and they have been for over 10 years. Like literally that format of ad-covered. I first made an apple pie when my grandmother came over. What? I don't care. Give me the apple pie recipe. I mean, like, what on earth is all these ads and pop-ups that are trying to cover just the simple ingredients and the 3 steps I need to know? Like, come on. That experience has not changed. So if we could update any of those experiences to something a little bit better, I think you're going to see a population shift over to that. The other thing I was thinking about during this whole thing, to take a little bit of a twist in this conversation, is also, what does the audience request and require?
Right.
The holiday season's kicking off, and I've been looking for some unique gifts, and I can't tell you how often I've come across the exact same gift from I can't tell you how many different places that say it's their unique thing, which it isn't, which it's like a table-side tented piece of wood that you put your book over so it holds the page. I don't know why, but that seems to be a popular gift right now, and my gosh, they're all over. And I was just thinking back to, okay, how many people do I know who really like reading paper books versus a Kindle, and are reading books versus scrolling on TikTok or, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, source of newsletters that they prefer? And getting down to this, there's a certain population that will continue to follow and require paperback books. And there's a population who's really going to love eBooks. And there's a population who's really going to get into, GPTs. So we're creating content again for these different audiences, but I think these audiences will persist and continue to exist. I mean, maybe we're talking about 2024 predictions here, but I don't think eBooks are dead. I was looking up this stat because I was trying to figure out exactly the date and number, but Amazon, they put a limit on how many eBooks you can upload as an author per day. This was in September of 2023 here, September 18th. And they've limited, so now you can only upload 3 a day. You're an author and you're uploading 3 new books, 3 new ebooks every single day. And that was because of the giant, amazing amount that has now been created with AI, and some author threw their name on it and created an ebook because it's the fast way to get that content out with their name on it. But this is the next piece. Why would Amazon do that? Why would they want a flood of ebooks? I mean, that sounds like a terrible thing to deal with, but they're a marketplace. So there has to be an audience, a purchasing, paying for audience who is interested in this explosion of content and says, yes, finally, my random niche, I finally have a book for this, or my random interest, I finally have a book that tells me something that I'm interested in a certain way, or I'll finally figure out what it would be like if George Washington and Abraham Lincoln were brothers in this random story. Which, speaking of GPTs, that was one other example I was thinking about. For over a year now, there's been historical AI systems, which basically then you can talk to Gandhi and have a conversation with Gandhi. All it is basically a prompt that someone has used and basically placed over GPT, and you're really responding through that system. But you're able to have these conversations. What would Jean-Luc Picard say about my current workplace issue? I could ask Picard what he thinks, and then have Worf go after them or something. I don't know. You could play around with that.
That has always been true of the internet, though. There are some wonderful things that people create that on the face of them are totally useless, other than, oh my God, I can't believe this exists. Thank you to whoever made this exist. But that's usually where it stops, right? I mean, there's no repeat purchase. There's no
Sometimes it depends on. And there's one. This was from years ago, and they published a ton of them. It was a list of romance novels between dinosaurs and people. And there was sequel after sequel after sequel being published, and it became like an internet meme because you're like, no way. And these covers were just hilarious. The standard romance cover, except there's like a velociraptor there. And you're thinking, this can't exist. And then you realize that there's like dozens of these things. Because there's an audience somewhere that must be purchasing this and really interested in this, or an author who is just diehard of saying the world needs my content and is really after it. Yeah. I mean, there is a weird niche all over the place. I mean, think of like the subgenres of any music style. Mm-hmm. There is a ridiculous number of subgenres, and they are continuing to be created every year.
3 years ago, I think, maybe more, Dee Snider, the lead singer from Twisted Sister, released a solo record that was produced, and all the songs were written by like Jamie Josta and some of the Hatebreed guys. So it's this like super East Coast punk metal sound with Dee Snider singing on top of it. And it's that perfect example of, okay, I like the songwriters who are a part of this project. I'm going to check it out. It's a little kitschy that it's Dee Snider on top of it. But oh my God, I didn't know I needed that record. That record is so good. It was completely the surprise of the year, where I'm like, all right, everybody's going to laugh, but you need to check out this record. Because it was so over the top. And I think the first single was, For the Love of Metal. And it was just like 80s hair metal, but heavier. And you're like, I don't want to admit I love this, but it is just absolutely something I need in my life.
So you get this explosion of content, which allowed that to happen. I don't know. I mean, I was trying to think of the popular song, but it was from an EDM artist, but he decided to go with a country beat. And some people asked him, like, why? Like, that's just kind of an odd choice for your current crowd. And his response was, that was the way to cut through the crowd, because I was basically looking at what have everyone else done, what have they produced, what have they used and sampled, and the thing that really was missing was country. And as it turned out, his blend of music plus the country beat to it worked really, really well and became a top single. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a weird thing, but it was caused by this explosion of content and somebody then taking a unique perspective, a little tilted perspective, and then saying, how do I cut through this and do something a little bit different? And they found a crowd. I wouldn't have expected it, but they found a crowd. So I don't know. I mean, GPTs, eBooks, all these different things, all these different publishing methods or content methods. If there's an audience, then I guess it works. I mean, I'm taking an oddly like straight capitalism view on this, but they're selling it and it's working. People are buying.
The other thing that it makes me think of, not just like the industrialization of food, right? But also, if you look at what happened with Napster and the purchasing of music with like the industry, as well as the simultaneous gains in technology where you no longer needed a studio, like a studio that you rent out at $300 an hour, right? You have a studio at your home and is now good enough that you can make, album quality demos from your house. Those two things I feel like are really good descriptions of what's going on now with a GPT thing, right? It will become possible for everybody to code or to release their own chatbot. But just because you have the tools, right, doesn't mean you're actually going to do the thing or see it to the finish line, right?
And it's having the hundreds of thousands, millions of people all taking their different variation of, I've got an idea, let's make a chatbot out of this thing, from which I suspect will emerge, here's what these things are really good at, and here's the value add.
Right.
eMarketer had an interesting interview. They were going through some data points about chatbots and people's perspectives on them. And really, they scored well in one area, and it was immediacy. People love the fact that they're available 24/7. Overall, they're not very satisfied, but if they have a very simple query, a really simple question, it's a great way to basically sort through the website or the terms and conditions or return policy or whatever on earth it is to give them that little piece of information that they're looking for and be on their way. So thinking about like from a funnel statement, like that's probably a good majority of people who have just a quick question of, do you have a 30, 60, 90-day return policy? Because I realize it's been a month and I need to return this. Like, how often does that come up to a retail store? Probably pretty frequently. Like little questions like that, that people are searching and Googling, just giving the quick answer. I get that. And I that's actually one of my predictions was basically the improvement of chatbots. And just, I really think that as those systems get better, it's a two-part piece. And I think that's even could be limitation of the GPTs as well. The second piece is source data. Do you have source data that's cleaned up, available, parsed out well enough? Is this random copies of some random book, a booklet that somebody then tried to make a PDF out of, and then they uploaded at a really crappy resolution? And if you got a whole library of those, that's not exactly great when you're trying to somehow take that content and then turn it into a chatbot. So there's that two-part piece of, do you have the content? Do you have it in a readily available format that the bot can then turn around and use? And what those requirements are, and training people to get their content in order or to use other systems, OCR systems, text recognition systems, you name it, to be able to like pull and grab that copy and get it in that state. That is a piece of education I don't think is out there yet of what does it take to make a good chatbot? Well, it takes great content that you need to have. What does that mean? That's a good question. And I think that's the next stage with the chatbots is the company education, the source material education that needs to happen.
And that's a good point, because I feel like, Microsoft is a great example of this with Excel and Word and all that. You release all these features.
Yeah.
Right. But half the time you don't know how to use them because all you're trying to do is figure out how to make the cell red. I just need a square. I don't need anything else,
Yeah.
Where, you see some of these, like the Excel Olympics or whatever it is, where they have the competitions of formatting and like
Someday.
On the one hand, wow. Like it's always cool to see somebody really good at what it is they do.
Yep.
On the other hand, oh my God, that's all you do every day, in and out. Like, what? I don't understand that. because it's so far from how I choose to live my life and what I find interesting. With the proliferation of content, though, I do feel like it just exacerbates the problem that we already have with getting ideas out and building an audience, right? It drives people toward what is already successful, to trusted names already. And, you know, you look at like, okay, why would I release a book over a GPT thing? You know, I mentioned a little bit on the top of, okay, you get these secondary effects of, you know, being able to speak at other places or whatever.
Sure.
But if you release a book, you also have a lot of the kind of PR benefits of a book tour, all of the radio interviews, all of the content that's built off of that, right? Because the radio station is going to be putting out their blog with a link to the interview and the clips from those conversations. You also get to go, you know, speak at some universities that might want to interview you on the things that you put out, because they might be relevant to a course. And so you are slowly building that audience through your expertise around a particular topic. You know, and yes, you have to sit and promote your ideas as much as you do create them, right? I think a lot of people, we don't focus enough on the promotion of the ideas. It's just create a whole bunch of them and then you'll be successful. And I think, you know, all of our conversations in, you know, late 22 and 23 has just been create as much shit as possible and hope that it works, right? But no, you still need to be strategic about it. You still need to have it ladder up into something.
Yeah, there's an interesting divide. I almost think of it as an SEO, SEM divide of which direction do you start with? What's your kind of mental state or baseline theory of if I find the best keyword research, I'm doing this all offline, my audience doesn't know I'm doing it, and I go through all this information, I pour through all this data and figure out basically what's going on, you know, journeys throughout my website, analytics, you know, response rates, you name it, and pull this all together, I can come up with the content that will have the terms that will somehow attract and become a magnet that will somehow pull in this brand new audience.
Yeah.
Then you can reverse that and you just look at it from a paid search world and you look at this and say, okay, what do I have that's worthy of promotion, that would be worth spending money on? And how do I basically take this and basically push this in front of this audience in such an engaging way that it'll attract them and pull them in? It's I guess it's a little bit of a push and pull sort of dilemma, but yeah, AI is fantastic at creating content, but you're absolutely right. I mean, your book tour happens because you have an agent. You have a PR agent. You have an agent who's helping you schedule all these things, who's working with you because your job is to write the book and to show up and be a good personality. Mm-hmm. Your job is not to figure out what bookstores can be available in Newark on the day you happen to be there.
Yeah.
But that's what your AI is for, guys.
AI agent to help book the book tour.
Didn't land the way I hoped. I want to segue off of, because you sort of kickstarted it with your prediction for 2024.
Yeah.
Do you have more on the rise of chatbots? Do you want to take the next one? Otherwise, I will list a couple.
Go for it. You're Dave.
So I think your Star Wars GPT, I'm going to take a quick cheap shot. This wasn't on my list, but I think we're going to see something akin to the .com era of just the rise of all of these different things, which I think would come as no surprise to any of us. But one thing that it reminds me of is sort of, if you take a look around the history of electricity, there was a period in time in which the sort of new thing and the way to succeed was to add a little bit of electricity to a bunch of things. And I think we sort of saw that a little bit with the Internet of Things, where it's like, oh, if you just add a sensor to a bunch of things, like magic happens. And with the .com era, it was okay, buy a website for the thing, like buy all the websites. And I suspect we'll see a similar event with GPTs and their like. And I think part of it will be which ones stick, right? Of the hundreds of thousands and millions of different we'll call them GPTs that get released, which ones are effective, and then also how do you filter through all of them? Is it a Google search type equivalent that allows you to do some of those things? So that was my cheap shot. I feel like that's just sitting there on the table pretty easy. I think though the one that I'm sort of more I want to say sort of more interested in, at least at the moment, is I think 2024 will be sort of the rise of AI productivity. So we're starting to see Copilot come out, and it's sort of proliferating through the Microsoft 365 apps, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of little teeny tiny things where you go, oh, that's kind of handy. Oh, that's helpful. Nothing in your face, not too obvious, but just little teeny tiny things that just make day-to-day work life a little bit easier. I think the Zoom feature that we talked about at the beginning of the episode, which was admittedly new to me, falls into this category. And I think that this is going to be they're going to sort of come along in the background, and they'll become the new standard of how we do work, is being able to use these sort of AI productivity. I don't even want to call them apps, but that's the language I have at the moment. And I think in a couple of other examples where we're seeing this, Dave, you can of course talk about the various AI productivity tools in the transcript area. I saw it in eBay. So when you're selling something on eBay, there's now a little button you can click to help you write the description. So I think those will be sort of just more and more to make the mundane tasks that are content creation, but not the exciting kind of content creation, a little bit easier. And the hope, of course, is that it gets better, both to create and to consume. So that's my hot take for 2024, is the rise of AI productivity.
Dave, you're up next.
Yeah, no,
You gonna respond?
I love geeking out on productivity hacks and creative processes and stuff. So part of me wants to just kind of fast forward so that we can talk about whether or not it happened. But anyway, we're in the present. We're here now. Yeah, I agree that the quote unquote entrepreneurs of 2023 that basically, put a wonton wrapper around, GPT 3.5 or 4, and then sold it as something new. I think all of those companies will die. That's my gimme prediction. There'll be a lot of them that just won't be needed, because I've even noticed that for me, like one of my takeaways this year was, okay, I signed up for a number of these things because it was just easier while I was figuring out how to prompt, kind of the new skill of this is how you talk to a large language model to get the result you want. Having the shortcuts of a tool that already had those kind of prompts built into the background was extremely helpful. But then I figured out how to do it without that, which now it completely has voided any of the reason to spend $20 a month with them versus, OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever else. So yeah, getting it straight from the source, I think will be a thing. My larger swing for the fences kind of prediction, I think we're going to see both Apple and Google finally announce their language models, or their, so like Gemini with Google, to go against OpenAI, and then Apple. I know they've been very quiet, and it's dinged them for not having an AI. So it'll be interesting to see what their response is. Because you talk about a captured audience, a lot of Apple users, and I am completely talking about myself here, are so ingrained in that ecosystem that if they do launch something that works well and plays nice, that will be an absolute game changer, because of people being able to adopt it and use it, right? You wouldn't have that hurdle of, okay, I need to go create a new account. I need to go do this. It's just ingrained. It's already inside of, FaceTime and Siri and, your messages or whatever else, with whatever new update. So yeah, those will be my two. I'm sure I'll think of more. But yeah. Alex, what's up on your end?
So one of my last ones is the continued proliferation of advertising to the point where there is some sort of rejection of it. So, and I mean out of home advertising, actually, not even digital advertising. Again, eMarketer, love a lot of their reporting, especially their daily podcasts. Kind of keeps me informed on a lot of the different kind of marketing news that's out there. And this one's a little old, actually. But it's the one that honestly broke me. Like, there's the straw that breaks the camel's back. This was the one that I just couldn't take it anymore, because it was like, no, we've gone too far with advertising. It is putting LCDs into the coolers of convenience stores. So as you walk up to the refrigerated unit that contains the milk, pop, whatever, there would be an ad playing on the door as you open it. And that one got me. That was the one that got me, because it was like, no, this is too much. I already at a gas pump now, and they don't even allow mute anymore on those screens. Have an incessant little, commercial that's playing as I'm filling up my car. Mm-hmm. And if I walk into the store, there's ads everywhere that are on paper, printed off from different manufacturers or different products, beef jerky, you name it, some sport drink, you name it. Like, there's going to be a lot of advertising that you see within a convenience store, but just that added level of grabbing attention through the interactivity of something that's a digital advertisement versus a physical one, as well as now allowing real estate to then be purchased on that cooler much more easily. So you could do programmatic solution, or worse yet, a Minority Report-esque retargeting, where you see something that triggers a purchase or something that you can then turn around and create a more personalized advertisement for. No, I'm done. I don't know. There's got to be something that's going to rebel against this and be like, no, we're done. This is an information overload in a way that is not requested and not wanted.
There's two reactions that I have when you say that. One is, what took you so long? Because 15 years ago, they put the screens above the urinals in bars so that, you're trapped and you have to look at them.
Yeah, literally right in front of your face, and you have a choice. Yeah. So
that's what got me, even when I was in high school. I'm like, man, forget this noise. But then also, what are you trying to do in a convenience store with that advertising? You only are reaching for something you already want to buy in that situation.
If you can even see it around the ad, you can hope that it's cooler. Yeah.
Right. So you have to open the door anyway, which nullifies the ad. And the ad's not about to convince you to grab something else, unless
2 for $4,
maybe
5 promotion. Grab the orange one, not the green one.
Right, we're out of the red one, so buy the blue.
Right.
I mean, this is just an extension of the icky recipe websites with all their ads extended into the real world. We're selling eyeballs. That's all it is. And if I'm a company who's buying that real estate, well, the more recognition and reminders and familiarity I have with that customer or potential customer, the more likely they're going to remember and feel good about me in the future, because they won't remember that was the one time that I had that ad that was annoying me.
Yeah.
So
we'll throw in the BMW advertisement. It's a cheap neighborhood. We'll throw in a cheaper one.
So here's a question for both of you as a follow-on to that.
Yeah.
If AI makes content massively more easy, And then advertising is bonkers, which we've known for years.
Yeah.
And that needs to change. Do we start seeing companies take the risk to do heavier lifts and more costly attention campaigns and, consideration things? Like, will we start seeing more kitty litter 5Ks or eBooks on how to care for your pets, or the Red Bull crashed ice kind of things? Do we see more of those because it captures more attention at a single time? It stands out from what everybody else is doing because what everybody else is doing is safe, and you won't get fired for doing a logical decision, right?
I don't know if it gets smarter. That's the problem that I have, because there's an explosion of content, but there's also an explosion of placements.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily actually enforce good content or, tough real estate. For instance, think of the Super Bowl that's coming up, and they just recently sold out all the ads for it.
Right.
$7 million pop now for 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Those are exceptionally expensive advertisements. I mean, some companies have put their entire year's budget into one ad, and that's it. And those ads have to then be good, and they're judged being good or not. And they're right next to a whole bunch of other ones that are pretty good quality. So they're going to be quickly forgotten if they're not interesting or poorly done or poorly executed to some degree.
Right.
So that makes it difficult. But when you have ads everywhere, that ad placement real estate is cheap. The remnant advertising for, the 3 a.m. shift at that convenience store cooler, that's going to be pennies. I mean, that one's going to be a really cheap placement to throw an ad up at that time. You want to do it during when everybody's going to grab their coffee and bagel in the morning. That's going to get the real estate's going to be a little bit more expensive. And that will push to have better quality, because why would you invest in something that's low quality? The ability to create the content, that changes things. I mean, think about like the Mad Men era of hand-painted billboards. We are far, far, far away from that.
Right.
With digital billboards, it's somebody creating it or an AI tool creating the content at that point. That changes the copy. That changes the content. The quality? I don't know. That's still, you're judging off of, it's very contextual because you're judging off of all the other advertisements that you've seen recently of how good this one is versus those. If you ever seen an ad before, every ad is great. I mean, that's going to be a difficult, question to answer. But maybe the AI tools will help improve and kind of lift that up. But then again, we go back to the same argument of how do you then cut through it once you have that, generic version that everybody's using.
Got a couple of thoughts. I think, to your point, this stuff's everywhere. It's like you see it quickly, it moves on. AI just amplifies the amount of stuff that we're seeing. And to that point, I think attention is at an all-time high or all-time premium, right? Because you just can't capture attention very quickly. So we're in a time where capturing somebody's attention is an all-time premium. Something big like the Red Bull activities, those are okay, but you have to get people there. They have to experience it. Otherwise, it's just one of the many things, and the ROI isn't that great because they just scroll through it. They go, oh, that's cool, and then they move on to the next thing. And so the goal is, boy, I wrote it down really elegantly, and I can't read my handwriting. Anyway, little blip into my world. I write things down. I can't read them. All right, so I'll backtrack. So in a world where our attention is an all-time premium, our goal as marketers, as customer engagement folks, is to capture people's attention, have them take notice. in the past, I think about like the 90s experience stores where you go into a Nike store and you'd have the different experiences. You go into an REI and you could take one of their mountain bikes around the track or on the store. Very cool, right? But you had to go in a store, and we live in a world in which you just click the button, order online. And so I think the way in which we capture attention and capture notice and get people to go, oh, hey, that's kind of cool, is going to continue to change and evolve to meet those. So maybe it's you get a package in the mail and there's a little something extra that goes on. That's a different way of capturing attention in the world we have that's different than a scroll. So I think to your question, Dave, it is going to be more important for companies to sort of think about those moments, but I don't know if it's going to be sort of the big dramatic events, because you might not get the eyeballs to capture to make for the ROI.
Right.
I think we can start thinking about how do we capture and get provide those experiences throughout people's day in a different way.
Dave, what are your thoughts? It's a great question.
So I want to be, this was my attempt at being, positive. However, I do think if you look historically, and this is where sort of the digital culture always leaves me wanting more, because it's always what's the new shiny thing, and they completely forget about what worked previously, or we've experienced this in a different way previously, right? So like billboards, for example, Alex, you and I talked about this in a previous conversation, either on or off record, on things we did with clients to underline the point of, if you are doing a billboard by a highway, what'd you see, right? You lift it up, you put it down. That's all the time you get to communicate your message. So don't do a paragraph of text. It has to be a really good visual and maybe 5 words. That's it. That's all you got. And people still can't do that correctly. And they've been around for like 100 years.
Yeah, there's even automated tools that help you determine where eyeballs will be and everything else on those billboards too.
Right. And they're still crap. So it's like, even with the tools that are there, I really think that the AI stuff, as much as everybody thinks this is going to be game changer, it is in certain ways, very specific ways, right? Not necessarily, universe shattering, because the way in which people use tools that are already available to them, it doesn't, there's not 100% adoption rate of your marketing automation suite, right? And if you can't figure out copywriting for 5 words, what makes you think you're going to do it with automated 500? There has to be a knowledge and a respect there for the medium and whatever it is. So I don't know. I mean, obviously we're still thinking about it. We're still working through. It'll be fun to see how right or how completely wrong we are next year with these predictions, especially with how fast everything's going.
I don't have to read email sometime in 2024 because AI is doing it for me. I call it a win. Let's do it.
Well, so actually that's an interesting thing. Like, and we'll talk about this on multiple episodes, where earlier this year I was reading, so I wasn't reading, I was listening to the audiobook of Satya Nadella's Hit Refresh, which is an old book, but still valid, especially with what he's doing with Microsoft and AI now. But he specifically talks about how artificial intelligence and Cortana in the Halo games is Microsoft's ideal for how they want AI to be. So that to me is a really interesting reference, whether or not we get there anytime soon. But if that's the North Star, even for one of the 3 companies that are, investing a ton of money into this, that becomes very interesting, because then, okay, what is it that Cortana is not good at in those games? And that's anything physical. And it's she still needs to be applied to whatever the problem is, to find the data, to find the whatever. You still have to get there, right? So I guess that will be our little cliffhanger for future episodes. Thank you all for hanging out, listening to this. Go see the transcript of this on davedoughertymedia.com, where you can find all the transcripts, links to stuff that we talk about. Drop your comments on YouTube, or rate and review on the podcast players. That helps us out, get more people involved, more people asking questions. So yeah, thanks a bunch. Have a great weekend, and we will see you all in the next episode.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks all.